Good morning. Again, I'm not even going to ask who was here for the first session because I get overwhelmed. And my mind will start to say, well, who's not here? And then I'll feel judged, and then I'll just never come back to Malmo again. Although the mayor will probably not like that. So the second session, for those of you who are new, we're going to be picking up where we left off from our first session. Our first session, we talked a little bit about the mechanics of organisms and technology as they relate to time. We talked about the three ways that organisms have sensed time throughout history. Thank you for shutting the door. Which were kairos, chronos, and this new form that I kind of coined the term algorithmos. And now we're going to talk about actual technology, the hardware and software that we use every day. Some examples of hardware and software that I think do a good job at helping me not manage my time, because like we have calendars for that. Hi, he's back there if you want to go back. Were you waving to her? He's looking for you, that gentleman in back. I mean, if I could sit next to him, I'd go back there. Woo! All right, I'm just kidding. I'm married. No, but she's really sweet. She let me, I did iPhone palmistry on her phone, and she has the sweetest wallpaper. Wasn't it your wallpaper that was so nice? Yeah, I loved it. So we'll just start with asking you guys some questions. What are some tools, whether they be software or hardware, that you guys use to be in a time machine, right? Like obviously the first one would be a calendar. But are there any other tools, software, hardware that you guys use to manage your time? Anyone? What? Manage your time, yeah. Do you measure it? Do you measure your time in any way? Do you use alarms or kind of things? Get your minds working on actual, I'm going to get there one second. I want you to get your minds thinking about the tools, the software, the hardware that manage your time. It'll start coming to you faster and faster. Which one? Stopwatch. Yeah. You mean on the app, Stopwatch. I love that thing. How do you use Stopwatch? I just meant like I'll use timer more than I use stopwatch, but my husband uses stopwatch more than he uses timer, right? So like I always like to know when something's counting down. He likes to see counting up. How many of you are stopwatch people? How many of you are timer people? See? It's like exactly half. Right? Okay, everyone see what your spouse is using. If your spouse is opposite, get divorced, right? No. Before you get married, check how they use their battery. What else besides stopwatch? Tools used? Wristwatches? Analog and digital, I guess? Who said that? Thank you. I can never pronounce that word. It's Pomodoro. I love Pomodoro. It makes me a little bit crazy. Mindful reminders? Oh my gosh, that's so good. They pop in and kind of break up your day. So just to say you're at work, or to say you're going home, or what do you? Oh, for time reporting. Does anyone track where they go, like their physical location? Bunch of you? I'm sorry? Google does. All right. So, yes, they do. Yes, they do. Oh, that's huge. Menstrual cycle, she said. You know, she said she feels sad, angry, and hates everyone. She knows why. If I don't sleep well, I actually don't look at my sleep stats because it gives me an excuse to be mean. I literally spent a year just showing people my sleep stats so they would get away from me. And like if someone was making me angry, I would launch heart rate and just stand there like this until they noticed, because like they didn't see anger, but they saw the numbers of anger. Like, it'd just be so much easier if everybody walked around with data on their head. But menstrual cycles, I always forgot there's a huge app that actually helps women with menstrual cycles, or maybe it's birth planning or something. Natural cycles, you guys know what I'm talking about? I literally don't have a use for it. A journal. How does journaling help you? Okay. That's really nice. He puts 3 things in a journal in the morning, and then at the night he reflects. Anyone else? You guys are good some time hackers. So you bill your time, so you have to keep track of which activity you're doing so you know how to bill your time. Yeah. Do you guys think that billing by how you spend your time is right? I mean, I've always had challenged by that. I think it's really dumb. I think it should be billed by outcome. You know, like I have a goal and then you're going to pay me that much for the goal. I don't care if I do it in a week or 2 days, and then pay me on the success of whatever you said I should be doing, and stop looking at how I'm spending my time. That's just me. I've just always hated time tracking. I think it's laborious and evil. Someone had their hand up over here. It tells you when you have to be sober again? Really? What's it called? I mean, I call mine spouse. I know, right? Or you end up with 2 spouses for the night. Okay. So there's a lot. So let's talk a little bit about the dynamics of time, building a time machine. So first off, with a time machine, you have to have hardware. So when I talk about building a time machine, I try to get people into the temporality of the hardware. So first off, all hardware acts as a time machine. We all know if you've got any type of streaming device in your living room, you can move time by scheduling things to watch later or record. You can remote view time by logging in remotely and seeing those things. You know, if you've got devices in your car, the GPSs are nothing more than time machines, right? Now GPSs will say to you, you can save 5 minutes by going this way and not that way. GPSs are getting very good at like just considering time. Now our GPSs in our cars will actually work with our devices and actually say you should leave for something at this time, right? So we've gotten really, really good. It's probably some of the problems people are having because they're like, all these things are measuring my time, but you're not getting any time back. So basically, for hardware to build a time machine, all devices right now, even those without a physical interface, can function as a time machine, right? So I want you to start thinking about your technology in this way of, can I make it a time machine? Second will be software. So obviously, the first type of software what I think of when I think of a time machine is calendar, right? We all have used calendars, but there's so many different ways you can use a calendar as an alternative time machine that we'll get into some of those too. It's really funny. I think that Apple, when they announced their backup system, they called it Time Machine, you know, back like 10 or 15 years ago, and it even looked like you were traveling through time when you were in it. But then there's kind of newer software time machines that a lot of us are used to. How many of you use Time Hop? Right? Time Hop's a thing like Facebook that shows you on this day. So it'll show you 1 year ago, 2 years ago, 3 years ago. It does a really good job of mining your social media. I loved another application that was very popular for a while called Memoir, which did something similar. Apple, I think, has got someone in chronobiology actually managing the software project around photos because it sorts it by years, and it even tries to create events for you, right? It's funny how we just take so many pictures, but we never go back and find them. But the minute we need to, we can literally do this, like 30 months, and then hit it. Have you noticed how we can do that? Have you seen people do it? It's ridiculous. Like, we have become so in tune with the recording of thousands of images that we know instantly how to go to something. And it's just bizarre how we were like creating this new way of dealing with it. And of course, about 2 years ago, maybe 2 years ago, they announced this kind of memories feature where they merge different time elements, which we talked about in the first session, but we'll get more deeper in this session. Next, you've kind of got this concept of what do hardware and software look like when they're combined together to do this. So some things that I've worked on, how many of you remember these? Google Glass. How many of you ever had a pair of Google Glass? Any of you? One of you? So Google Glass actually had a temporal interface. So I did some work with the Google Now team in 2013 around this. But basically, when you're in Google Glass, the first thing you'd see through the viewfinder is this screen, which would say the time and then the phrase "OK Glass." That's how you could speak to it. "OK Glass," like "Hey Siri, OK Glass." This was always now. But what most people didn't know is you swiped backward, it would show you everything you searched for and took a picture of. As you swiped forward, it would show you what the future was coming. And people are always like, well, how does it show you the future? Well, there are things it does know about the future. It does know if you have any more events. It does know weather. It does know battery settings in 2 hours, that sort of thing. So it's really kind of interesting when you think about kind of the merger of hardware and software and how, over the last decade that all interfaces have really become either timeline-based or maybe temporally based, and then so much so that we got bored, so we started rearranging them, and that's kind of where we get into this kind of algorithmos sorting. You'll know from my talk yesterday, I did something that basically would, if I spent too much money, I would get a message to my Google Glass that basically said, shop less. Right? So that's looking at projected behavior in the future by how much money I was spending and pulling it back into a message now. One of my coolest things, I think, is the Apple Watch. So the Apple Watch allows you to do some really interesting hardware, software, time travel. Obviously, you can have just the time. You can have your schedule, right? This is coming up next. You can have your health for the day. So you can, basically, people who've got all their rings closed in the morning are, kind of interesting. And then you can also see where you are like in the world, which is like another way of doing this. But something else you can do is Apple Watch gives you this ability in certain watch faces to time travel. Does anybody have an Apple Watch? Bunch of you? That's the other thing I noticed from doing iPhone palmistry was there's definitely two tribes here. You Android people and you Apple people, and I don't think you mix, right? Because it's just so interesting how different the two were, but okay, I won't go there. But Apple Watch, you can actually time travel. Do you use the time travel feature? Yeah. Maybe if they made it more useful, you would, right? But there's a lot of different things you can do when you can go forward and backward in time, which we'll get to a little bit more. So can you build a time machine? So let's first get into kind of some examples of ways that you can make this work and thinking about shifting your consciousness. So there are basically 6 different types of time interfaces and the applications that go along with them. So I call the first type of interface for time, temporality, the forgotten. So there are specific applications and devices that just manage things historically, and they're not really interfaces to right now until you need something, right? Historically, we'd call this a file system. But if you think about photo apps, those are really services to manage forgotten things, like things you want to get to very quickly. You just put everything in there. And from a temporal standpoint, you'll always find some element of a forgotten in a lot of software. Then you've got software that becomes specifically focused on managing the past. Almost all social media is about managing the past, if you really think about it. Now, you'd like to think that it's about managing your relationships, but at the end of the day, what Facebook has really turned into for a lot of people is coming in and reserving up your memories to you, whether it be 1 year ago or the entire year in review. Did you guys know that Facebook allows you to edit your memories? If you go into your On This Day in Facebook, you can actually remove certain people so they don't show up. And at the end of the year, you can remove certain events. There was a whole movie about this called Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, right? And it's really provocative because you'll find a lot of people now are starting to go back and edit their histories in their social media, which I think is very telling. But again, being able to manage your past and have the past proactively reserved to you is a different memory or time machine function than actually being able to just harvest everything out of the back. Moving forward from the actual forgotten to the past, you get to the next point, which are milestones. So milestones still are forgotten. They still live in the past, but they're really a combination of the forgotten and the past merged together. They are milestones. They are two things that come together to let you denote something very powerful. So again, I'm going to do this very, very slow. You've got the forgotten, things like photo albums. You've got the past, which are things that show you how you spent your time. And then you've got milestones, which are the pasts and the forgotten come together. I'm only doing this twice because if you start to think about it, it makes a lot of sense. And you can start to actually use your software and hardware differently to hack your sense of time. So milestones are actually really interesting because milestones are the first piece of software that really unites you to a behavior, right? Memories on Facebook can kind of reunite you to a memory or someone, but milestones are behavior-based. So whenever you're thinking about technology and you're thinking about things you want to change, if you want to get away from that speedy world, you want to start to look for things that show you milestones. Not the past, not the forgotten, but the milestones. Then you get to, I think, coming forward in time. We're at the forgotten. Then we're at the past. Now we're at the milestones. So what do you think is next? No, not yet. Not yet. The recent. The recent. Have you noticed how much software is built for the recent? The recent is everywhere in the last 2 years. The recent is haunting you. You can't do anything without seeing the recent. And the recent is insidious because unlike the forgotten, the past, or the milestones, it's what you should be doing. Right? Right? Is the reason they make, when you look for something, it to be there because it's like, oh, you were doing this, but you got distracted. Right? So the recent is software's way of going, you're so lazy. You should be doing this. And I hate it because whenever I pull that thing down or look for something and it's right there, I hate you. Why are you always nagging me what I should be doing? Okay, so we're up to the recent. Anyone want to guess what's next? I won't trick you this time. The present, the now, right? And the now is really software involved in do something for me, right? Almost the entire Silicon Valley is built on the now, right? Every piece of like mind-bending billion-dollar software company is built on something now, right? Everything that was Web 2.0 was like social, mobile, local, hyper, freaking, I don't know. I mean, it was very, very important. The now is so important to so many startups that they actually don't think about their development around like, is this something that serves people now or from the past? All right, we're gonna go on. Does anyone want to take a guess what's past right now? There's something coming still forward. It's got a couple steps still coming. The temporary. Because the temporary is now, but it ain't gonna last. Right? It's now, but it ain't gonna last. All good software in the last 3 years has been built on the temporary. Everything you love to do is built on the temporary. You love it when you see an accident and you know to avoid it. You don't love the accident, but it's nice knowing that it's not going to be there forever, right? Google bought Waze for like $4 billion. Why? Because you have temporary problems in traffic every day. It's a $4 billion short-term problem, right? And that's an interesting way of looking at it. All security lives in the temporary, right? So when we say, well, what could we do? Like, heck, what is Snapchat other than kind of, you know, now versus temporary? Which takes us to the recent's sister. So the recent has a sister, lives next door. They don't really talk to each other. They don't really get along. Does anyone want to guess what comes after the temporary? The soon. The soon, right? We've all seen this. We've all had it pop up. This needs to happen soon. Sometimes they're reminders we create for ourselves. Sometimes they're AI-driven. Sometimes they're helping us understand. Sometimes they're goals near the end of the week. If you have a health watch, it'll say, you can still make it. It's only 3 hours till midnight. Stop drinking and go for a run, right? The soon is this horrible, horrible, nasty thing that's kind of like, it's almost as bad as the recent, but it's like tells you, it daunts you. And then finally you have the King Kamehameha of all time travel, the future, right? And the future is really good because it falls in a couple different buckets, but ultimately the future has a lot to do with things we're pretty sure through historical trends or things algorithmically we know are going to happen or just behaviorally. One of my favorite weather apps is Carrot. And Carrot has a whole little time machine where you literally can go out hundreds of years and basically see climate change. Another place you'll find the future. Who can think of other software where you'll see things literally days from now if you just let it keep running? Because there's a lot of software already creating stuff for you that you haven't seen or done yet. There's a really big one every single person in this room uses every day, and you don't realize that your entire rest of your life is already mapped out in it. Calendar, yes, that's true, but even a bigger one. All music that is streamed knows what's coming to you for the rest of the day. Have anyone ever looked at your queue? If you don't change it, it's created. It just keeps scrolling. If you go to Spotify or Apple Music and keep scrolling, it just keeps going and going and going. And if unless you hit next, right, even then it's still going to go to the next one. You literally have to change tracks. One of the things I talk about in my book is how actually listening to streaming music was literally keeping me not getting things done. Because what happened was these streams of music that was already programmed coming up to me, it knew habitually, if I was in a pattern where I wasn't getting something done and I was listening to music that contributed to that, then I would stay in that pattern. So if I wanted to get something done, I literally had to go and listen to music from a playlist that's not mine, that maybe is music I don't even like, to actually focus on getting stuff done. Because this was like a lullaby to my distraction. Right? It just kept going and going and going. And Apple knows this so well that all the ads for Apple Music say this. All right. So you'll start to see this merger. And there's a website that I absolutely love for travel that actually looks at the future and gives you a filter for it. So Hipmunk gives you a filter for agony. So you can look for flights by price. You can look for flights by time on the road. You can look for flights by time leaving, time arriving, or you can look by agony, which is a combination. So the agony filter for the future is a combination of price, number of changes, and length of time on the phone. So again, when you filter and manage the future, you can start to combine it with behaviors to return certain feelings or sayings to people. Now, I don't know because of the European privacy laws, but does your Google actually show you when places are busy or not busy? Does anybody use it? I mean, I use it all the time. I mean, and I think it's just really, really telling. Because what is this on Google? This is called Knowledge Graph, by the way, other than a way to manage your time, right? It's a time machine to say, don't go there then, right? And it's very, very provocative, all the ways that our technology is showing us time. So there is one last time stop for every person on Earth beyond the future. Does anyone want to take a guess what the last one is? The end, right? So some of the most, biggest software companies out there actually have death contingencies now. I know Google has death contingencies. Facebook has a death contingency. Can anyone else think of any software? I know there's a list I've got on my banks have a contingency for when you die. So basically you give someone kind of like access. Has anybody set up their Facebook in case they die? So they go, a couple of you, a bunch of you? So, it's one of these things where you can do that. And again, it's very morbid to do, but it's, it's kind of like, you really need to think about this. So how would you create a temporal interface? So instead of going and ask you questions, I'm going to help you just get to the next part, which is how do we actually start to time travel knowing that there are these ways that we can see software and hardware. Is this interesting, by the way? Is this making sense to you guys? I'm going a little bit slow, but I'm trying to help you get your heads around it. So these are the ways you can operate your time machine. Knowing that you've got these 6 or 7 different ways you can filter and work with time, you've got 7 different ways that you can redefine your time. So you can speed it up, you can relive it, you can slow it down, you can pause it, you can reinforce something you value, you can expand your mind, someone said mindfulness reminders earlier, or you can define your future. Now defining your future is my favorite. That's the one I've used for almost a decade to hack the future, to make my current day better than it was a year ago by knowing that I'm already living a year from now, which will make sense by the end of the talk. So, speeding up time, not hard to do. If you want something to go faster, your time to go, just move along, get out of your life, just because you're in a rough spot, easy. Live the way we all live. Turn your battery percentage on. Make sure your home screen is full of reminders and applications and things telling you what to do. Every time something offers to save you time, take it. You'll have no time. I can guarantee every time you save time, you have less. And then anytime a piece of software tells you to do something, do it. Your time will go so fast, right? Now, luckily, most of us are living this way now, and that's the problem. We're like, you don't want your time to go fast, right? But as you start to learn to manage your time, and when I say manage it, I don't mean like, be a really time guru. I just mean understand it. You'll want to be able to go back to the old way you lived, digitally Amish, right? I want to go back to the days when things were rushed. Okay, I'll just put everything back on default. I wish my devices had the setting like normal human being, crazy human being, and like now. So what about reliving time? Okay, now I just want to slow things down. So we talked about this. If you really want to start to be more mindful or slow your life down, Your phone has a way of tracking how much time you spend in apps. Spend 2 minutes, 2 full minutes a day in one of your photo apps. Now, you might not do it normally, but I'm just telling you right now, if you were to spend 2 full minutes, set a timer, spend 2 minutes looking at old photos, even if it's just rearranging them into folders, you will notice a gigantic shift in the way you think. Because when you look at old photos, you are forced to confront time. You're forced to confront, to compartmentalize it, to think about it, to not live in this weaponized now. Something else you can do to basically relive time is count up and count down. So one of my favorite apps on my phone and my Mac is an app that actually counts down, but then after it stops counting down, it starts counting up. So what I do is I put important events in my counter, and then as they come, I see them coming, and then as they go, I see them going. Does that make sense? So if you don't have an app doing this on your laptop or your phone, do one. And just start putting certain events in there. First off, don't make them outrageously stressful events so you watch it coming, right? Unless you really, really want to start to play with your mind. But then when you watch it go, you go, oh my gosh. Like, I don't know how old the screen is, but when my husband first came to Sweden, I counted it down. But then when he left Sweden, what I did was every 30 days after he left Sweden, I sent a message to him saying, Sweden loves you, day 60. Sweden loves you, day 90. As kind of a reminder to bring him back kind of in Sweden metaphorically. Something else I do, can I show you some? I don't think I can because I don't know how to make the screen work, but because it won't let me project. But something else I do is I use an email app called Spark. Do you guys know what Spark is? Have you heard of it? Oh, well, it allows me to snooze my email. And what I did was I have an email that my husband sent me a few months ago in the morning that said, I hope you wake up and don't have an inbox full of emails and think about your life and all these other kind of wonderful things. And what I do now is I just have it snooze and show up every morning. Right? It's like Groundhog Day for love. Right? It just keeps coming over and over and over again. So again, start to mess with time. Places, if you need to kind of slow down your time, start logging where you go and start revisiting it on a map. One of my favorite apps is Swarm because it gives you where you spend your time on a map. And again, just like if you spend two minutes a day in your photos, if you spend 1 minute a day just on a map looking at places you've been, even without photos, it's mind-bending. The Photos app will do this too. But seeing physical space erodes time and slows it down. Something I talked about in my talk yesterday that I think is really, really fun if you want to slow down time a little bit and maybe start to relive memories is take photos that you capture passive music, like if there's a party or a bar you're going to, get Spotify Pro, and it'll ambiently record all the music you're hearing that night, and then take a picture, and then just go to your smart house and you reprogram it as much as possible to start to replay some of those things. So slowing time down, change your lock screen, change your wallpaper frequently. Right? One of the things I like to do when I first started all these experiments in my mind was actually creating wallpapers that told me to do things that didn't involve my phone. It seems weird, but you'd be shocked how often picking up your phone and seeing this, with a message like, text your mom, or I love this one, don't take a fucking picture, right? Just simple things that you tell yourself that remind you. There are lots of applications that also work to help kind of slow down time. Someone mentioned a mindfulness application. There are lots of Buddhist meditations. Even if you don't meditate, they'll still send you messages that are very gentle, right? So how many of you have mindfulness or meditation apps? A bunch of you? Isn't it great the way they just send you little messages all day long? It feels really, really good. Something I talked about on my talk yesterday, which is alarms and calendaring. So basically, I have a bunch of alarms on my phone. I don't think I have a picture of them here that tell me to do things throughout the day or certain days of the week. Google Calendar will actually let you schedule habits or what they call goals to put them in to your life to make your day create time for certain things. Wearables now, I think, have done a lot for this. The Apple Watch has these ways that they can count time. I love this view because if you think about the watch face all the way up there to the left, takes about 365 days to do a full circle, kind of like the clock we were talking about in session 1, all the way down. You see time gets faster, 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 crazy, right? Just like it goes backwards and forwards. Really very powerful. Something I talked about during my keynote, and I'd love for you guys to check it out, is this app by Ben Grosser. It's Grosser, Ben Grosser, but it's a plugin for Chrome, and it gets rid of all the dates and times. So it takes all of that stuff that's in Facebook, when something happened, how many people liked it and commented on it, and makes it all disappear. So check out Ben Grosser's plugin. You will literally love Facebook again once all the numbers are gone. It's ridiculously cool. Ben Grosser actually created this plugin that removes all the date and time from Facebook. Facebook isn't the problem, counting is. And then pausing time. So some things I like to do to pause time. I have a reminder to take screenshots of my home screen once a month. You change a lot. You don't really realize how much you change until you look at old home screens. Does anybody ever look at their old home screens? So again, yeah, it's really cool. So especially if you have children, take screenshots of theirs, just like you would if they were growing up. Take screenshots of their screens so you can see kind of how their values change over time. I mentioned this earlier, but this is an application that I love called Spark, but it's got a snooze function. So it's a way you can come in and manage your email to say, hey, I don't want to do this, or I'll do this next week, or I'll do this someday. It's great if you don't want to practice zero inbox, but still want to keep it really clean. This is another great plugin that I love called Inbox When Ready. It basically locks you out of your email because you have to set an inbox budget, and you only get that much time per day. Now you can override it, but it's super, super really good at helping you stay focused and reclaim some of this time, or to pause and get it back. And then I love this. All of my social media apps on my phone have wrappers. So basically any apps that I find make me command immediate attention. There's an app called Pause, P-A-U-S-E, by Dopamine Labs. And it wraps all of my social medias in a filter so that I have to breathe before they let me in. So if I go, and you won't be able to see this, but if I go into Facebook or Twitter right now, it's going to not let me in until it senses a breath. In. So, again, putting a little step to help you through these things is amazing. There's a great app to help you pause time a little bit that I talked about during my keynote. It's a plugin again for Chrome. It's called Time Well Spent. But you put in how much money you make a year, and it changes every site with a price to the time you have to work for that item. Really, really profoundly good way to start to see time. Time well spent. And then the next part for time is like reinforcing values. So again, I think a lot of us struggle with kind of the human-machine connection. So, making sure a lot of us have this turned on by default, but making sure we've got night shift or whatever the component is to adjust your eyes. A lot of GPSs now will actually give you apps that ways to travel that don't involve actually getting there faster. This GPS gives you ways to walk and shows you how many calories you'll burn versus a bike versus taking a bus. This is the same app. It'll go ahead and show you ways to stay dry, so keeping you near buildings, right? It's really about merging these experiences. And this is something we worked on a couple years ago, and was basically watch the way you went every day and told you to go new ways. This is one of my favorite apps. It's called Deep Time Walk. Anybody ever heard of Deep Time Walk? You like Deep Time Walk? Neat. So Deep Time Walk basically works by telling you about the history of Earth, but it only works when you're walking. So the app will stop playing music the minute you stop walking. So it's really kind of nice if you want to just slow down your day or be able to take things in. It's really remarkable. I'm sorry? Yeah, as you walk. Yeah. Yeah. It's again, check out Deep Time Walk. It's really, really cool. Apps to help you meditate. Again, I think some people are into that. Some people aren't. You don't need an app to meditate. You just I think a lot of people push that on people. A lot of apps now help you sleep better. I think it's really important we start thinking about that. This also involves alcohol and caffeine. We talked about sleep a little bit earlier, and then talk about expanding our mind a little bit. So one of the things I like to convince people or suggest that people do is our phones all have, both Android and iPhone, have these sections now where we have reminders, where you can swipe to the left or to the right. I actually sort mine by temporality. So the first thing I see in my reminders is my body, like how much I've eaten or not eaten, caffeine, moved. Then I see the world around me. Then I see the sky above me. Then I see what's going on that day. Then I have to see what I have to do on that to-do list. Then I see what bills are due. Then I see memories. So if you think about organizing your reminders by temporality, right? Not by like what you need to know first, but by what you should be paying attention to, right? Not what you need to know first, what you should be paying, then time will go slower, right? Because when you come in here, you're not instantly confronted with your calendar that you're trying to manage, you're instantly confronted with your health, if that's what you want to focus on. If you're someone struggling to kind of get that spark back, maybe move your memories to the top, right? These are all things you can do in that filter. And then I talked about this during my keynote yesterday, but the idea of renaming all your devices names that are values you have, like my computer is open your heart, my phone is compassion, my watch is kindness. Anyone with a Bluetooth connection who gets near me becomes Buddha instantly, right? They don't really. I have my file system organized by value, so all the files on my computer also have tags like hope, love, happy. So I can search for happy files, I can search for hope files, right? It's really good stuff. It's just a different way. My folder names for my applications that I don't want to have, but I have to have, are named for the 7 deadly sins. Avarice, greed, lust, right? So it's about changing my perception of the immediacy of these things. And as I mentioned earlier, I have all sorts of tasks that are not only career and life focused, but they're also mental focused. And then I have also alarms that are mental focused. And as someone mentioned over here, I have geofence reminders that actually help me remind things. I bought a Tesla, not because I'm rich, but because you have to charge it. So again, if you really want to slow down your life, get something that can't go forever. Now when I get in my car, I know I have to take a break every couple hundred miles. And because my car is Bluetooth and my devices remind me as soon as I get in my car and it connects, I'm being told something specific to do in the car. And it really comes down to what I said yesterday, this idea of stop valuing your schedule and start scheduling your values. We'll end with kind of this section, which is about keeping people, things important. So we talked about calendars. I still use a calendar, but now I have different types of calendars. So I have one calendar for keynotes, which is like work type of stuff. I have one calendar called projected events. So I schedule things that I want to happen. Maybe I want to go someplace. And it's in a calendar that I can toggle on and off. And I usually keep it toggled on so when I look at the future, I'm reminded of the things that I want to be successful in or do. It seems kind of crazy, but just create an alternate calendar if you use multiple calendars for the future. I have another calendar called Significant Christory. It's a joke. My name is Chris. History, Chris, Christory. But sometimes I will actually keep journal entries in there and just toggle Significant Christory on and off to kind of get my own kind of reminders that I care about. I also keep note of the heavens. So full moons right now are in retrograde. No one should be traveling or speaking to people. It's a really bad time. And then I love this app. Again, this is by a Swedish company called Northcube. It's called Life Cycle, but it allows me to keep track of how I was feeling in certain places. So if I have a feeling, I can look at my whole day in a donut. It automatically keeps track of where I was and how much time I was there. And then I go back and tag the feelings. Like, oh, that was a good, I like that place. Oh, I didn't like that place. I like this person. I didn't like that. And it's a really interesting way to start to see your time kind of in a donut for a feeling. I put the email in here from Fernando I was telling you about, guys. I did it this morning. Yay, I remembered. So this is the email that he just sent me recently, just a couple days ago. And I saved it, and I've been re-snoozing it now every day. Good morning, my handsome husband. I lay in bed with we call them Annie Mules, with our Annie Mules, missing the warmth and love. Look at this. I didn't want your email box to be full of business demands and transactions. Instead, filled with love. You're admired, cherished, wanted, and needed, all of you. Today is yours, and you are magic. Grateful for you and our family, Fernando. I know, right? Why wouldn't you want that in your mailbox every morning? Why wouldn't you? That's what we should fucking be using technology to do. That. Fuck Uber. Sorry, I didn't mean to swear. Yeah, I did. And then finally, I talked about this during my keynote yesterday. So this idea that there's an app for Mac. I know they make it for Windows now too, but it replaces your battery with your life. So you put in your age, and it calculates how long you're going to live, and it shows you what percentage of your life you've used. I just love this. But go and look. I think it's called Life Status, but it's in the Mac App Store. It's also, I find it. And then finally, as I mentioned earlier, I use an app called We Croak and another one called Deadline that kind of shows you how much time you have left and pushes those messages to you every single day. That is it. We are at the top. I was going to end just talking about Spotify has done a lot of amazing work with time and timelines, but we are out of time. So this is my last session except for a panel that I've got coming up. I just want you guys to know that you can change the future. There is nothing you can do right now that can mess up the future. It's going to come with or without you. All you really have to do is start caring just as much about what you see and how you think as you do about all the things you're not getting done, because you are the last device you have to control. I love you guys so much. Thank you. Have a great rest of your conference.